Datadog is a very powerful monitoring platform, and absolutely, it, as with any other platform, there's going to be pros and cons, and it could be the best solution for some specific use cases. But from what we've been seeing is if you're deployed in AWS and you have all AWS native services, there's no reason why you can't be monitoring your entire workload using said AWS services.
All right, is this thing on?
I think so.
We're back at it. It's another day. John and Ed's TED Talk Together Tuesday. Johnny D, happy to see you, bud.
Absolutely. It's been crazy. It's been
last
so
week
busy.
was really crazy. So, and also the last like 4 sessions that we've done have been an hour.
They have.
That's pretty wild.
Between all the special guests, getting the inside scoop on Savannah and the marketing and
there we go.
The behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And Kyle as well, and Sean, and getting all those guys on here. So
that's been fun.
Good. Yeah, it's been a blast.
Yeah. I've liked having the kind of different take of getting other people in and figuring out, like, you know, what are they interested in talking about. And one of the things I loved is, like, with each of them, we didn't give them like a script. We were just kind of going, let's just talk. What's interesting. So what did you think about that? Did you like that process?
Absolutely. And you know what's so funny is that as through all the guests as they were talking and everything, I'm like, man, I can relate to that, and I can relate to that, and I'm like, I can see why we're all friends and we get along, because it's like we just have so much in common, and we had no idea, even though we've all different walks of life and everything. It's so crazy.
Yeah, it's great to have what's the best way to say it? It's like, I have found myself, like, when I've been in New York and meeting with the different AWS sales teams that we're meeting with there, I don't always walk away from meeting sales teams, especially outside of AWS. I haven't found it, like, they've done this whole sales culture, I think, has done a good job of curating that. But I've been with other large cloud entities, and you just try and talk to these teams, and you're like, who did they hire? Who is this person? Like, you don't want to be on the call with them. You don't like them, or maybe some other big tech companies. But I've found recently that a lot of the AWS sales teams that we're working with, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so lucky that I get to just be at this happy hour and talk to this person who is very interesting and very likable. And then it turns out, oh, we're going to try and do a whole bunch of stuff together also. So to me, that type of stuff is really cool. And then when you double click into the fact that it's like, oh, that's even true within our team, because I've been at other companies where I'm like, dear God, not that person. Shut the hell up, you know? Where you're like, you don't want to be on a call with your teammate at this 4,000 person company, and I have never had that here at BUILDSTR. So I love that.
Super love it. And even digging in with you and Kyle too, it's so funny because obviously you guys are sales guys, but you guys know so much about tech and are able to talk about tech. And it's so crazy, you guys explaining tech, going deep into tech and talking about it, and then a byproduct of you guys being able to explain it and go in depth of it is sales. So I was just telling Kyle, I was like, again, I don't feel like you guys are really sales guys. I think you guys are solutions engineers, basically.
That's very kind of you. I would say I'm aspiring for that. It's been, not that I was ever writing real application code, but it's been close to 10 years since I was doing any SQL stuff. So we'll call it 8 years since I was actually writing SQL code. But I'm actually, it's funny with that blog post I just wrote on AWS certifications and obviously, and also just kind of like years of contemplating and thinking about it. I've started to really go, okay, I need to double click into the technical. And even last night, you sent me over the so the AWS distro for open telemetry workshop. And so I started reading through that and I was like, God, I gotta, like I pulled up the CLI. And so I dusted off my own AWS account and started kind of messing around in there. And I was like, oh, I don't even think I have the right, roles set up. So I was poking around IAM. And so I'm very rusty there, but with aspirations of grandeur that we'll see ever get attained or not.
Oh, that's what makes you dangerous.
Yes, yes, we can just call it dangerous.
No, that's the fun part, is being able to just basically go into a terminal and start basically destroying things and breaking things and fixing it. And as long as you're not doing RM-RF, which is
what is RM-RF?
From your terminal, it's basically remove recurse dash force. So remove everything from your whatever directory you're in and recurse through it. So if you're in like your root directory, it'll remove everything. Just wipes your whole hard drive.
Yeah, don't want to do that.
So it's a joke within engineers, like, oh, just do RM-RF.
Now I know, and I'll be able to use that joke, and people will think I'm smarter than I actually am.
Until other people type it in, and they're like, "Dang it, Ed, my computer's broke."
What if she just leaves it in, like all of this conversation? That would actually be pretty funny if she did that. All right. We have been talking to customers in AWS about helping them with their monitoring. And there, in the past, there pretty much was only Datadog and then eventually some other monitoring systems. But now with an aggregate of various other AWS native services, you can do all the same thing within AWS without having to pay Datadog. And there's some scenarios where it's just better to just pay Datadog. So if a customer comes to us and they're like, hey, can you migrate us off of Datadog, and can you actually make another interface that has all of the different boxes and graphs and allows you to filter? And if they want Datadog, then it's better for them to just pay Datadog instead of paying to have the whole environment rebuilt. But with pretty much that caveat and maybe one or two other edge cases, it's going to be better for customers to migrate off of their monitoring system and then deploy the native AWS services, right?
For the most part, absolutely. From a cost perspective, obviously, egress, a lot of people don't take into consideration sending your metrics and logs to an external third-party provider, but egress costs alone can balloon your AWS bill, even besides whatever licensing fees you're paying for Datadog or whatever additional tools you're using. So by being able to keep all that traffic internal to AWS, you don't have to pay those egress fees, which is a huge win. But in addition to that, because this is going back into my DevOps and SRE background, Datadog is a very powerful monitoring platform, and absolutely, it, as with any other platform, there's going to be pros and cons.
Yeah.
And it could be the best solution for some specific use cases. But from what we've been seeing is if you're deployed in AWS and you have all AWS native services, there's no reason why you can't be monitoring your entire workload using said AWS services. And so really is honing down and kind of replicating what Datadog does, because Datadog does make it very easy to get that telemetry and then ship it off to Datadog and make sense of that telemetry, right? So
Yeah.
they make it easy because you get a Datadog agent, you put it into your code, and then bam, you get your metrics and application performance monitoring and traces, and it's fantastic. Very minimal effort, right?
Yeah.
And so the barrier of entry is very low, right? And so the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the CNCF, has their own open standard, which is open telemetry. And it's a very common standard across programming languages and different things like that. But what's very cool is they've actually made it AWS native now. And so that's a huge win for all AWS workloads. So it's super cool because they're trying to go with that same very easy to enable auto instrumentation that Datadog has to enable logging metrics and tracing using AWS native tools like CloudWatch, X-Ray, and then also being able to visualize it in a way like Datadog using either Grafana, using managed Grafana and managed Prometheus, which is super cool as well. And so by them enabling all of that, it actually does create a whole telemetry pipeline that saves you a lot of money by keeping it all in AWS and then not having to pay those third-party tools and those licensing things. And in a lot of use cases, actually does give you the same benefits and some additional benefits over Datadog as well. But again, it's something that we have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis to determine what you're using, what your environment looks like. Are you coming in from a hybrid environment? Do you have hybrid workloads or on-prem workloads, different things like that? But the really cool thing is by using like managed Prometheus and managed Grafana is even if you have like those hybrid workloads and different things like that, is you can still push your metrics, logs, different things like that into Prometheus and to your Grafana instance and be able to visualize all your different workloads and really visualize that entire workflow basically in that one centralized location, which is super cool still. So again, totally possible, but again, we have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis.
Yes. So what does that evaluation process look like? How do you like to start that evaluation process?
Oh, great question. So really, I guess it's starting with what does that observability look like today, right? Kind of like establishing what your baselines look today, right? Like getting like your KPIs, your alerting, your dashboards, what's important to you today, right? And then how do we translate that and how do we replicate that into AWS native? And then basically like a checklist. Are we able to replicate that? Can we replicate that? Or what kind of work is that going to take? In addition to that, while we're making out this telemetry pipeline, we can start thinking about standardizing and establishing like SLOs and SLIs, part of that SRE mindset, where we can really start setting like service level objectives where we have like this service needs to have 99.99% availability. The latency needs to be a P95 of 250 milliseconds or different things like that, where we can create actionable alerts. And so when we do have this telemetry pipeline and we do finish that migration and everything, we have a whole user journey and we don't just have dashboards where we're like, hey, great, what are we looking at? We have stories to tell from these dashboards that we can see, okay, this means our users are having a good time. This one means they're having a bad time, right? Because at the end of the day, if we don't understand what those metrics mean or what we're looking at, then our metrics and our dashboards really have no value.
Right. So it's really about going in and setting the baseline. Where are you at today? And then once we understand where they're at about their business, then we can start digging into, well, what are your objectives? And then once we can have them say these are objectives, then we can come in and we can also help give some guidance on, okay, well, here's SRE best practices, and this is what we think you should do. In your scenario, I think we just need to fine tune everything that you've got and not change anything. That's one scenario. Another scenario is like, okay, well, this is a perfect situation where dumping your third-party monitoring and telemetry provider will save you X percentage of your spend every month, and you'll be able to gain the same, if not better, insights into everything going on in your system. Yeah. And really, it plays out from there. And that's why at the beginning, you're like, we just take it case by case.
Absolutely. And there are some caveats as with any monitoring tool and things like that. Like, for example, with JavaScript or Node.js, for example, there are some pitfalls in the open telemetry right now, and there's open issues. But basically, the auto instrumentation doesn't initialize metrics, for examples. And so you actually have to go make application code changes and add manual code snippets. And so there are code changes required besides the auto instrumentation.
Right.
So being aware of those caveats could determine, okay, this is not an easy transition to this tool. It's going to require developer help or a services partner to go in there, make the code changes, get the telemetry right, to replicate that, to really understand all the work that it's going to be involved to make that transition.
Right. That's a good call out, is making sure. It's like this, there's like a stupid story I heard one time of like somebody who's like on an airplane and they're like, here, put this parachute on. And you're like, God, why would I do that? It's so uncomfortable and I'm going to feel all these clips and my seatbelt's not going to fit right. And then they're like, no. The plane is going down. Put the parachute on it. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm so comfortable. Thank you that I have this parachute. So it's like, if you frame correctly, here's the scenario, this is everything that's going to go on, and this is what it's going to cost you, time, focus, money-wise, then people will be able to make the decision like, no, I don't want to do that. I'll just pay Datadog. Or like, oh my God, that'd be so much better because over the next 12 months, I'm going to save, X percentage of my monthly spend. And so paying, all of those calculations then go, great, I know which way is the best way to go. And the truth is, the little, secret that we just keep trying to tell everybody is that's how we do everything. Like, we're not, like we have frameworks and the frameworks help. That's like our landing zone quick start. Like, that's a framework setup that you set up in CDK, ready to go, right? Or you can either use CloudFormation or CDK, right? But those are really just kind of like modular templates that we use to help accelerate. At the end of the day, every engagement that we do is very much where are you, the customer, at? How can we help you? And fine-tuning that engagement based on our customers' needs. So it actually is just fitting the pattern that this works the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just that, but like also handing off and having that knowledge transfer, like, okay, hey, this is what we did. This is exactly how we did it. Here's the architecture diagrams, the documentation. We're going to walk you through how we did this. We'll let you do it a couple times. Because at the end of the day, if we hand it off to you and you're not able to use it, what good is it? Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny the conversation earlier talking about being technical, and even this conversation, it makes me think about this conversation I had. Well, okay. First thing I was thinking about is that blog post I just wrote about certifications. It got a lot of interest, a lot, different engineer friends of mine were like, "Oh my God, that's truth," blah blah blah. And one of the things I've been thinking a lot since then, and then I was even talking to somebody who is involved in the creation of JSConf, the JavaScript conference this week. And so I was like, "Hey, you're kind of a bigwig in the tech industry. What do you think about this idea of certifications and knuckle dragging sales guy trying to go deep in the code is?" And he was like, "Look, I've got a buddy who's a cert nerd, and he has his gold jacket. Um, and then he was like, I have never chased certifications, even though I've helped write them in the past. But he's like, the goal is not the certification. The goal is the ability to do. And that's what everybody who I've kind of come across that I respect their opinion lately has said, is like the goal is the doing of it. And in our process of like trying to figure out how do we help customers, just being able to just help them execute, to do their work better, is it's really it's why I stayed in tech. And so the fact that we've now evolved into this strategy of how we do things, not that I'm not saying we came up with it, but um exciting is not the right word. It's motivating at a core level of like why I get up every morning and turn my machine on and write emails back to people, and bird dog opportunities, not just because I'm like, oh, I need more money. It's more like, how can we add more value?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, man, I feel like I've always been that way too, because like even before I got into tech and everything, working in customer service, selling shoes, and working at Hollister and Champ Sports and all that different things, um, and there's so many times it'd be like, I can't sell you this pair of shoes. Like, yes, you might like them and everything, but they're too small for your feet, man. You're gonna wear these out of here. You're gonna hate me if I sell you these shoes. Like, let's get you something actually comfortable that you're gonna like
Right.
enjoy and wear these, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so taking pride in our work and making sure the customers ultimately are our key thing right there. So
Well, I think that's a good place for us to break. Maybe not next time, could be next time, but soon we're gonna actually do like a little podcast workshop, but like go through this process, right? Hopefully I'll have done the workshop by then, so I can have something to add, at least good questions of like, hey, this didn't work when I did that. And you're like, dear God. Let me put my nice face on and answer this idiot. But I think that that'll be a good thing for us to do, and we'll also be having other guests on. So
yeah, that'd be super
i-
fun. That'd be a good
if
time.
you've made it this far, first of all, subscribe to the BUILDSTR YouTube, and what do people say? I always think
Yeah,
it's so
what
stupid.
do they do?
Smash the
Click down
subscribe
here.
button. But seriously, subscribe. You'll get the notifications of when we're posting, and then also add in some comments either on LinkedIn or on YouTube of the type of guests that you would like us to have, and if there's anything else that you want us to like talk about. All right. Well,
All right. Till next time.
rock on, everybody.